Okay, it's 12:30, so we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask Commissioner Chermak to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
All right, welcome. We will note for the record that Commissioner McGloin is not here today, and Sheriff McAndrew. I know Sheriff McAndrew is taking two of his daughters back to college today, so I'm sure he'll be icing and elevating once he gets home by the end of the day today, depending upon what floor they're moving into. So I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes that were circulated from our July meeting. And if so, I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading and approve them as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We are approved. Anybody from the public like to address the board on agenda items only? Okay. I see no one, so we'll move on to the items on the agenda. The first one being a motion to approve all the current payables for the Community Corrections Center and the prison. Since our last meeting, they too were circulated in advance of the meeting, and I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review them. If so, I'll entertain a motion to approve the current payables.
Motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That motion is approved. Next, we'll go to the Controller's report. Mr. DiBileo?
Yes, George. Controller's report for July of 2024. The Controller's office reviewed the prison inmate and canteen account reconciliations, which were prepared by the prison business office for the month of June 2024, and found no discrepancies between the reconciliations and the bank statement. The balance in the inmate account was $469,800.20 as of July 31st, 2024. The balance in the canteen checking account was $448,199.42 as of July 31st. In addition, as of July 31st, the canteen account also included a balance in the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust investment account of $923,308.53, which earns approximately $4,055 per month and which will mature in January of 2025. During the month of July 2024, $101,632.63 was paid from the canteen account for the benefit, welfare, and education of county inmates, and an itemized detail of those expenses are attached to my report. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Controller. Anybody have any questions for Mr. DiBileo? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve his report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The Controller's report is approved. Thank you. Next item on the menu, and we'll welcome our Solicitor, is the Community Corrections Center report. Mr. McConaughey.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the house arrest report for the month of July. Adult house arrest had 179 participants. Juvenile had 18. Programs revenues. House arrest had $59,163.10. Juvenile had $2,770 for a total of $61,933.10. Year-to-date totals for both departments is $418,056.85. Programs expenses were $106,192.39. Programs completions, there was 42. Violations, there was 10. We still have 4 outstanding warrants for house arrest. Budget report overall, overtime's at 38%, expenses at 62%, and revenues at 62%. That's the end of my report.
Any questions for Mr. McConaughey? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve his report.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr.
Have a good day,
McConaughey.
everyone.
Have a good day. Next will be the warden's report. Warden?
Good afternoon, Board. The average daily population for July was 770 inmates, 612 were county inmates. We averaged 675 adult males, 10 juvenile males, and 85 adult females, and the average daily population of U.S. Marshal detainees was 158. Our overtime and out-of-county boarding reports are attached. The staffing update, currently our correctional officer numbers break down to 169 full-timers on shift, 5 out on workers' comp, 1 out on continuous FMLA with 87 with intermittent FMLA, 0 out on administrative leave, and there are 7 full-time vacancies for a total of 182 full-time officers. As of July 31st, our revenue was at 43% and our expenses were at 61%. The extraordinary occurrence reports, there were 2 in the month of July. On July 2nd, a female needed to be extracted from her cell due to unsanitary conditions. However, she was refusing to voluntarily exit her cell, and staff used the pepper ball launcher prior to entering the cell and were able to safely remove her and have her placed in a new sanitized cell without any escalation of behaviors. And on July 29th, a male inmate threw an unknown liquid out of his wicket, that's a little door inside of a cell door, striking one of the nurses with the substance. And due to this inmate's assaultive history and the conditions of his cell, a decision was made to remove him from the cell. This individual was unwilling to comply with moving out of the cell, so cell extraction was authorized. The use of OC spray and the pepper ball delivery system were needed to achieve the ordered cell extraction. The individual was then placed in the emergency restraint chair for the safety of all involved. PREA, there were 2 PREA investigations completed in the month of July. One was an allegation of inmate sexual harassment. It was deemed unfounded, and the other was an allegation of staff on inmate sexual harassment. It was also found to be unfounded. The completed investigations have been forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for further action if deemed appropriate. Request for the use of canteen funds. I'm requesting the use of funds from the canteen account to purchase access to a large volume of e-books via the PA State Overdrive Library on the tablets. The initial cost for the first year is approximately $21,000, and subsequent years would be $16,000 in order to join this statewide program. It's the same program that the state correctional institutions use. Via partnership with ViaPath and Overdrive, we will be able to provide inmates with free access to over 5,000 publishers. This would be in addition to the free access the inmates currently have to over 1,200 publications, and inmates would directly benefit from this matter if the board deems it appropriate to authorize this request. Secondly, I'm seeking permission to use canteen account funds to pay inmate workers at the prison. There are a multitude of jobs that selected inmates work inside the facility, such as kitchen workers, maintenance assistants, block workers, et cetera. And I'm seeking permission to use the canteen account to pay these individuals on a monthly basis. Currently, the canteen account has a total of over $1 million. I think I added up real quick, it was $1.37 million between the checking account and the Pliget accounts. And I believe that this request is an appropriate use of the money in that account. Personnel, we have conducted a series of interviews for correctional officers, and we're in the process of hiring both full and part-time people. We're aiming to start a new class of cadets on 9/4 All newly hired officers would undergo a 5-week-long basic training course, and upon successful completion, the new class will be ready to go on shift. And this concludes my report.
Tim, the publications, is it a broad spectrum that's going to be available? Can you describe that? please?
Yeah, I mean, there were self-help books, there were religious-oriented, and there was the traditional, or if you want to say classic things, they were there. I always refer to A Catcher in the Rye. I don't know why I didn't see that on there, but there were other notable. Moby Dick was on it. I went through a quick scan of it, and there was very well-known novels on there, as well as things by James Patterson and Mark Twain. And there was, when you're talking about 5,000 publications, there's quite a selection there.
Are they all books, or are there other types of publications, magazines, newspapers, that kind of thing?
Not magazines or newspapers, but maybe like periodicals.
Yes.
And books.
Okay.
I have a question. I generally support any of the increased free access, but what attempts, if any, have been made to obtain books from the library free of charge or from other applications? So personally, I use Libby to access any library books I want, and the ones you've mentioned are all older authors and older books. Hoopla is another app that allows free access, both audio and written books. What attempts have been made to explore other options rather than a pay-for-book service?
The problem with that is internet access. We can't grant the level of internet access to the inmate population of the facility. This company, Overdrive, works with, I mentioned Viapath is formerly known as GTL. It's our telecommunications contracted service. They work together in all the state prisons, and we don't have to worry about unauthorized use of the internet or even criminal use
I'm
of it.
not talking about a wide open authorized use to the internet. I'm talking about a specific site to a website like Libby that connects to an individual library.
I understand that, but what I was told was that kind of opens the door to all sorts of other access by the individuals that would be utilizing it. So we stopped looking at that point in time.
Because these publications would be viewed on the tablets.
Yes.
I have a question. Can you go over again how much time the inmates get on the tablets and then when they get charged to be on them?
I'm not sure exactly. Colleen would know just how much free time they get. 8 hours a day? 8 hours a day, but right now they have limited access. We have about 1,200 different publications that are free, but it's really, those 1,200 are predominantly, they're religious-based and they're self-help based. I would say about 90% of it is that. So it's kind of a limit. You have stuff to read, but it might not be the things that you're looking to read.
Yeah. So I think I said this the last time, and I know I emailed you to look into it, but I really think it would make sense to do an analysis on what it would take to have a library in the prison, like with physical books, number one. And number two, what I've seen from other prisons and in Luzerne County especially is they have and I think it might be beneficial here, if we could figure out a way to do it, is a prison librarian. So we talked earlier about people, when you used to have physical books in there, you had people, volunteers coming in and out and all that, and that's great. But in Luzerne County, they have a person who goes through all the training and all the security things, and they're in the prison, and they're the conduit to the resources, to the books, and to all that. I think it might be worth going down that and looking at that rather than, this might be great, but there's a cost to it. Is it every year?
Yeah.
Right.
16,000.
16,000 a year, where if we just built up a library, and I know that there are tons of people out there who are willing to give books and donate books and all that stuff, if we could figure out a way like other prisons do and build the library up, we wouldn't have a cost every year other than whatever the librarian, you would pay the librarian. I think it's worth looking into.
And to self-confess to the board, I stopped going down that road at this point in time because we're having issues with finding space for that at this point in time. Again, I know that we discussed it in the past about the use of the classrooms being used as video courtrooms, and that it's tying up staff and space. So I would have a hard time converting a classroom into a classroom/library, and I can't find any place else off the top of my head, or even after I thought about it for a while and even reached out to other people to find a place that we could have this. We have a law library, and that's got several computers in it, and we do run into issues with the law library operations. I don't think there's enough room in there. It's a small law, it's about the size of what's behind your counter there. So it's not a ton of space. I would like to eventually look at that possibility and using at least half of, we have classrooms that are about the size of this entire room here, and we can always turn that in a quarter of it or half of it into a makeshift library. And that's kind of where my focus was. We just can't go there right now.
Okay, so then that leads to the second thing that I was going to bring up. Do we have an update on the use of these classrooms as video courts? Are we, I know I brought this up before. I don't know, Judge, if you have talked to anybody. I know Brian Jeffers was going to meet with Judge Corbett, and I don't know why they haven't got an update yet. But is it just the same as it's been?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I haven't seen any diminished use of it.
And does that, I think the last time we spoke, the fact that that is still happening is causing overtime. Am I correct in saying that in some ways?
Yeah, there are, on the heavier days, we have 3 officers that are assigned to, if you want to say, video courtroom duty, running back and forth with inmates from different housing units, being in the courtroom to make sure that people are doing what they should be doing and not other things. So it ties up 3 officers for an 8-hour shift.
So I know I've said this before, but my issue with this really is, I went back and looked. The county paid total well over $4 million for the Criminal Justice Center to purchase the property and then to rehab the property. So the fact that we're still not utilizing the Criminal Justice Center to its full capacity, and we're utilizing classrooms that are supposed to be for the benefit of the prisoners, but from what I can see, the reason that we're still using them for the courts is for convenience. That doesn't make sense to me. So I really think that, and I'll make a motion later on in the meeting, if everyone is agreeable to it, for the prison board to send correspondence to the president judge and demand that they cease doing that and move the operations to the criminal justice facility, which is what it was intended for, and utilize those classrooms for what they were intended for, which I know Colleen Orzel had presented me with a list of the classes and the educational things they used to have, and then how that's been pared down because those classrooms are being utilized for the courtroom. So.
Good.
Okay. So can I make the motion now or should I wait?
I don't even know if you need to make a motion, but I'm happy to have you do it, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the prison board send a letter to the president judge requesting that they utilize the Criminal Justice Center and remove the courtrooms from the classrooms in the prison.
Okay. And if everybody, there's a motion. Do I have a second
Second.
on the question?
I think I need more information before voting on a demand to have that done. So I think the question I would have is there an additional expense then associated with transporting the individuals from the prison to the criminal justice system, even though I understand they're attached? I would need to know that expense from the sheriff's department and the transportation or prison personnel to transfer them, secure them, and can it be handled at the same pace? So,
And I think I can
and
answer.
for that reason, I need
I think I can answer that. So I went back and looked in the archives of the Scranton Times just so that I had a full understanding of how this whole thing went down. And the whole idea for the Criminal Justice Center was to be able to, and Warden, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was to transport the prisoners directly out of the back of the building to the Criminal Justice Center. And that was supposed to save money. So I don't know what additional cost.
But in fairness, previously they were transporting them from the prison down to the courthouse, holding them at the courthouse, transporting them back. There's still a demand on personnel to escort them into the criminal justice system and maintain their security in the criminal justice system. And that's, so I think there's a savings, no doubt, but I would want to know that expense before we're saying you have to do that and remove them from the prison when we have a system that is working right now for certain procedures to be handled through video conferencing without increased expense. So I personally would need more information before voting on it.
Well, and the sheriff isn't here, but I think, there's added expense to it. There's no question. The question is who's going to bear that expense? It's either going to be the warden and his correction officers, or once they leave the prison grounds and walk through the wall into the Criminal Justice Center, now it's the sheriff's responsibility. So, but, one of the things that Commissioner Gaughan points out is 100% correct in the sense that we're going to save time and expense of driving inmates back and forth to the courthouse. Now they're just walking them back and forth. And so I'm sure, although I haven't looked at the numbers, the expenses have gone down because you're not gassing up vehicles, and you could only take so many inmates at a time. But that seems to be the issue. That seems to be, I'm not even going to call it a conflict. It's an issue. Who's going to incur that additional cost? Is it going to be corrections officers, or is it going to be the sheriff's office? But that, they should be conducting those hearings in the Criminal Justice Center. There's a couple of courtrooms in there, and one is in constant use for Central Court. The other one's available.
Yeah, and in this article, it specifically states, we anticipate that the hearings and matters will now be able to take place in the new building once it is redesigned and open as a criminal justice center. I mean, I understand everything that happened with the pandemic, but we don't have the problem of the pandemic anymore. And it's to me, unless someone gives me another good reason, and the reason I'm bringing it up now is because I've waited now the last 3 months. I've asked for movement on this, and I don't see any movement. And every day that goes by that we're utilizing that space, and it's not for the benefit of the inmates and as a classroom, and we have this $4.5 million building that we behind us, to me, doesn't make any sense as a commissioner and as a taxpayer. So.
Can the motion be that we have the situation looked at and get a report back?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it has to be put in writing, but certainly the communication. I can tell you that I've had communications with them, and I'll continue to have more.
And I don't want to beat a horse to death. This will be the last thing I say, but Judge, you just said you've had communications with them. I think unless the prison board demands that we go back to the way that it should be, in my mind, then nothing is ever going to happen. It's convenient, so that's why it's done. But it's not to the benefit of the prison, and it's not to the benefit of the inmates. Mm-hmm. And we're utilizing classrooms when we shouldn't be. It should be in the building that was redesigned for that specific purpose. And so, am I wrong, Warden?
No.
I mean, honestly, that's right. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, and I think one of the factors to be looked at if the board decides to take a good long look is if it's going to call for overtime on the part of the deputy sheriffs or the sheriff's department, compare our overtime rates, compare our salaries, I think a correctional officer is paid more than a deputy sheriff. So if it's equal 2 for 2, it still makes sense to go back to pre-COVID.
Okay. And I'll report back.
Okay. Now, I made the motion, so I think we have to vote on the motion, correct?
Yes.
And it was seconded.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and I have a second, so.
We have an amendment with Gary. So I'll second the amendment of Gary that we inquire about the information rather than a demand, because I think I need that information in order to make a vote.
Okay, you clear on that?
Yeah, I don't agree with it, but, okay.
Okay. So we have a vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. The ayes have it. Did you get all that? Okay. Okay.
Just on another question on the other issue on the request for
Canteen
payment
funds.
from canteen funds for inmates, how are they currently paid, or what is the present situation for their work that they do?
We spend approximately $200,000 to $240,000 a year of county taxpayer dollars to pay the inmate workers at the jail. It's one of my line items, and I'm looking predominantly because, A, the money is there, but secondarily, again, I didn't think it was an inappropriate request to help reduce the budget for the county.
So how much are you asking for then from canteen funds?
It would be about, it's about $20,000 a month.
A month.
A month.
Okay.
Yeah, $240,000 a year, somewhere right around there.
Okay.
So it's shifting the burden from the county general fund to the canteen account.
David, do you see any issues with that?
There's a legal issue. I don't know that it's necessarily consistent with our policies in terms of necessary costs being expended from canteen funds as opposed to, you know, our obligations versus extra things we can find for the prisoners has been the historical use of the fund.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think we might want to table this for further discussion so that we can just flesh it out and make sure that everybody's on the same page. I'd be okay with doing that.
Everybody else okay with that? Okay, so we'll table that, Tim.
Not a problem. What I could do for the next meeting is I could have a breakdown of all the jobs, their functions, what they do, and how it benefits the inmate population.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful. If you could try and circulate it in advance of the meeting so that,
Yes. Yeah, I can get that out within a week.
And likewise, and I don't want to lose sight of it, but I think we probably should table the request for the e-books until we get the further information from the classrooms. But generally speaking, you know, $20,000 upfront cost, $16,000 a year for unlimited books is a good expenditure of money for the benefit of the inmates. So that would be an appropriate expense from the canteen fund to provide greater access without other extraordinary expenses like healthcare benefits and hourly wages for a librarian. And people want to read them on their tablets, not in a library anyway. So I would generally support that, but I will wait for the information on the freed up classrooms.
okay. Is, when you're talking about, I think, 20,000 up front and 16,000 a month, is that involved with the long-term? A contract or a month or a year?
Yeah, that was, I had this, I don't know if they talked just how many years. They were saying 21,000 for the first year, 16,000 annually thereafter, but no, not like for 3 years
But we're
or
not
7
locked
years.
into any specific period of time?
No.
Why don't we
Okay.
get a draft contract or proposal that we can circulate and review so we know exactly what we're doing?
Fair enough. Can you
Yep.
solicit that, please?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the warden on his report? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to accept his report.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Warden.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody from the public wish to address the board? Bev?
Bev DeBarros, Scranton. I shouldn't have to come here today because I proposed this last month's meeting. I asked simply for a big screen TV that sits on the cart, that's kept in the closet adjacent to the chapel, that can be pulled out so that we can use it with the DVD player to enhance our Bible study programming. Not just mine, but all the uses of the chapel. And so after the meeting, Colleen told me, oh, we don't have to buy that. We have one. All you have to do is ask for it. Of course, I asked for it. I sent the email to 3 people thinking if somebody's out, the other 2 or other person can give permission to have that set up for me. I go there. Nobody heard about it. The guard went and looked. He couldn't find where it was. So I'm asking again, please buy that piece of equipment, have it at the ready. And, okay, what I was going to show the last time was a 30-minute presentation that actually had been shown on ECTV. Travis Prince had done an interview on a really good sort of local artist. She's done local work, Andrea Racine. And not only was it informative about her artwork, which was amazing and inspirational, her life story was inspirational, which we need those kind of positive stories for in there. And now also, going forward with that, I got this from our Albright Library. It's a 6-part documentary on Christianity in America on 30-minute segments, which I wouldn't even do it every month, or maybe once a month, but tells the story of how Christianity shaped life in the United States. Very, very well done. From the time when our country was first founded, with the Pilgrims and that, and then the Quakers with William Penn, on to today. And we know that wherever we go in our country, you see the church spires, and people ask, what's the difference between this and that, this denomination or that one? It's well explained in here. Also, like how our itinerant preachers used to go around before churches were even erected. They would go on horseback, and just like Lincoln and his circuit riders with the lawyers and the judges before we had courtrooms and that. So it's American history, and this one sentence, expert commentary to discover the importance of Christian history because we're the unique in the world of our separation of church and state. And that is documented in here also. It's just like such an important resource among many that are available. And what's standing in the way is that piece of equipment. So I'm asking you to approve it today, have it done, but I think back, I have to come to the board because when I go to the administration, things don't get done. And when we first got our book library in here, that was Judge Girollo was sitting there. And right at that meeting, he said, good idea, do it. And we did. And it was easy. And we had Langan, who, Deputy Warden Langen, who had come from another prison, knew the whole, it was set it up the same way. I'm sorry. And we had, it just retired Sergeant Piga was the training sergeant. He trained our 10 volunteers how to conduct a volunteer work in the prison. It was smooth. Another thing, then the voting, came from Judge Gibbons, approved the voting, and then it was a done deal, we started. Same with getting the newspapers in here, in the jail, which is still going on. But things, I don't always like to take up your time with this stuff, but it's what I see, it's what I think is a need and an opportunity, and that's what I'm asking for.
How big do you want it?
I want the,
How big a TV do you want?
yeah, they had one before we used it, and now it can't be found. Or we share it with Outreach or something like that. Well, then we need to buy a new one.
Okay, how big?
So is that considered done?
Yeah, I mean, we consider everything that you asked, but I'm curious, because you want to get a DVD player to go with it and probably
Yeah,
a stand.
It was on a cart. The carts that we use in the prison was kept in that closet, the locked closet next to the chapel. You were in the chapel, and there's a door there, what was a chaplain's office in the past. And,
Can I just throw out there?
Sure,
The TV, it's ours, we purchased it.
okay,
It is in the back, it is more than usable. It's in the, I don't remember the letters of the classrooms. The one classroom that has the storage closet in the back, it's stored in there.
okay,
You're welcome to use it.
okay.
You know, sometimes the orders from the top don't reach the ground troops. Maybe we can find a way to make sure that the people who are there know about the TV and that they're allowed to use it.
I personally purchased a TV and a DVD.
I think it's communications. I think, she get somebody, whoever's there that day doesn't realize it's there or knows how to get it. So maybe just make sure everybody knows.
I sent it out to Officer Williams.
I
our
did.
reporter. He knows everything.
I did ask, I emailed, I didn't get a no, so I assumed that it was going to be there.
I didn't see,
You didn't see their email. I sent it to you, to Ludo, Zito, so that somebody would get it.
not about the TV though.
Yeah, it was about the TV. Deputy Warden.
I think Sal responded back to you that you could use it.
he
Well,
didn't-
somebody's got to
well,
get it, bring it
didn't
in.
happen.
That's, I guess,
Didn't
that's the
happen.
thing. So if somebody could make sure that it's in there, take it out of the closet, and get it there for her, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. Unless you want to let her wander around. I don't think she wants to wander around, do you, Bev? Okay. All right, anybody else from the public?
Norma Jeffries, a resident of Scranton. And as I was listening to the report that was given by the warden there, it just prompted a few questions for me. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to include them with your delay of when you spoke about hiring or paying the prison workers. And it just prompted questions because I'm a retired HR person. So are they going to be interviewed? How do you select them? How are they going to be paid? Is the pay going to be going through payroll? The check will be coming with the Lackawanna County header on it. Will the taxes be deducted for their, I guess, for working in the city of Scranton? They'll get a W-2 form at the end of the year. All those kind of questions around being a worker. Are they considered an employee of the Lackawanna County? So those are the kind of questions that were prompted by the report of the individuals that may be hired into the position. So as you go forward, I hope you take those kind of questions and considerations into play before decisions are made.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public?
These are inmates we're talking about.
Right, yeah. My experience with, federal, state, and local prisons in terms of inmates working, their jobs are considered part of a privilege based on their behavioral status inside the prison. And so, but they're also, remunerated at a much smaller rate. And there's no actual money that changes hands. It gets put on their respective accounts. When I don't know if that's consistent with what's going on at the Lackawanna County Prison, but that's typically what happens in a penal setting. Am I off base, Tim?
We believe that to be the case.
You want me to?
Please.
But you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, I hit the nail on the head.
Yes, you do.
All right.
No, they don't.
The job's posted, and it's based on behavior. So if the
On
job-
conduct, I guess I should say, conduct.
So if are the jobs posted then, that if I had good behavior, then I should apply for one of these jobs and get this money put into my account. And then when I leave and I've satisfied my duty there, do I get that money to take with me?
Could the warden
as
respond
I
to
exit the prison?
Warden's nodding his head, so I guess yes. And I suppose, do you apply? Do you have an application
Yeah,
process?
it's not a formal, like, getting a job out
Yeah.
in the real world, but there is a process there. We rely very heavily on counselors and correctional officers recommending an individual.
Okay.
But he or she can put in for any job they want in the place. You just write a request out, and you'll be considered. And they get paid a couple dollars a day, not much, but we don't take taxes out. It does go on their books. They do get whatever the balance is with everything. So if you leave with $100 on your books that you earned while working, you get a check for $100.
It's kind of like a comparison when Pat McKinney used to work for the newspaper and now he works for the county. It's that much of a reduction. Anybody else from the audience? And no response from Mr. McKinney either, so. All right, any other business from the members?
Oh, I just saw the TV. Is that a go? She'll have the TV. So for next meeting, we'll know that the TV worked and everything. So, okay, that's all.
Okay, anybody else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
on the question, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.